What's up everybody, this is Austin from Derailed Coasters, and in today's video we are going to be discussing some rides that could potentially be leaving some of these Six Flags parks. Now, as we have seen in recent memory, the new combined company of Six Flags and Cedar Fair is no stranger to removing roller coasters from its parks, as we have just suffered the great loss of King Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure, as well as Green Lantern at Six Flags Great Adventure and La Vibora at Six Flags Over Texas. Now, before we get into some of these rides that are in danger of potentially being closed at their respective parks, I want to make a disclaimer that a lot of these are of my own opinion, so if you disagree with them, that's okay, just don't be combative with me over in the comments. These theories that I'm going to be coming up with in this video are simply based off of things that I have heard within the industry and simply my own opinion. There are a few rides, however, that are obviously in immediate danger, and I will go over why I think that is at the end of the video, as this video is going to be categorized within 3 different tiers. We're going to be going over rides that are at slight risk of being removed, moderate risk of being removed, and high risk of being removed. With all that being said, let's jump right into the video. So before we get into our main categories, I want to talk about a few honorable mentions that I'm going to be throwing into this video. These are coasters that I believe could be removed in the near future under special circumstances, however, I do not think they face any sort of immediate danger of being removed. The first honorable mention on this list is going to be Corkscrew at Cedar Point. While this coaster has been rumored to be leaving the park for quite some time now, I do not believe that it's in any immediate danger of removal because of 2 reasons. The first and main reason is I believe that Corkscrew sits in a plot of land that isn't really interfering with any future expansion, and I don't think it's really going to be easy to put anything in that spot to replace it anyway. The other reason is there's a much larger coaster at Cedar Point in danger of leaving, which I think will take priority over Corkscrew, but we'll talk about that coaster a little bit later in this video. The next honorable mention is going to be Hurler at Carowinds. While I do not believe this coaster is in immediate danger of being removed from the park, I feel like it potentially could be in the future. It's not exactly the most fun wooden roller coaster, and it's not exactly the smoothest either. Carowinds has also made it known that they have no intentions of calling RMC to do a conversion on this coaster, which is very unfortunate because RMCing Hurler could really elevate Carowinds' lineup a lot higher than it already is. The next honorable mention on this list is going to be Dragonfire over at Canada's Wonderland. Now, there's 2 specific reasons why I put this in honorable mentions and not slight risk. There are markings around the ride, however, I do not believe these markers around the ride are for removal. Canada's Wonderland is not exactly known for removing their roller coasters, however, this does not give any particular ride at the park immunity of being removed. I just don't think it's an immediate thing that's going to happen anytime soon. I also had the opportunity to visit Canada's Wonderland back in May of this year, and Dragonfire still had a pretty good amount of people waiting in line for it. Therefore, I wouldn't deem the ride unpopular enough to be leaving the park. And the last and final honorable mention on this list is El Toro over at Six Flags Great Adventure. As if Six Flags Great Adventure needs to lose any more rides than they already have, I'm putting El Toro here because this truly is one ride that has very specific conditions for its closure if it does get closed down in the near future. As many of you may remember, El Toro has had a couple of incidents within the past couple of years. One incident was a derailment, the other incident being a pothole that caused some injuries on a train of riders. These incidents happened in back-to-back years, and both incidents also required the state of New Jersey to red tag the ride for operations. I truly believe that if El Toro unfortunately has another incident, the state will have to red tag it one more time, and I believe that it'll be 3 strikes, you're out for El Toro. Now, on the bright side, I have heard that there is a retracking project going on for El Toro that could take place over the next couple of years, which would ensure its longevity at the park. So here's to hoping that this comes to fruition. Now that we got all the honorable mentions out of the way, let's talk about the rides that I think are at slight risk of being removed from the Six Flags chain. The slight risk category is comprised of roller coasters that I believe Six Flags may opt to remove in the future. However, I do not believe it is the immediate future, but I think that their eyes are still on these rides for potential removal. The first ride on this list is going to be X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. While I do not believe this is in any immediate danger of being removed, I have heard that this ride is a maintenance headache. This ride's popularity also seems to be mixed within the general public. I have also heard that in recent years, X2 has spent more time being closed rather than open. Regardless, this is still a star attraction at Six Flags Magic Mountain, and I can definitely see Six Flags opting to put more money into it to keep it up and running rather than just opt to remove it. However, the reason I put this in the slight risk category rather than the honorable mentions category for this video is there are unfortunately rumors circulating now that X2 could potentially be on its way out. The next coaster on this list is going to be Accelerator over at Knott's Berry Farm. While I don't necessarily believe that this is in any immediate danger of removal, as they just performed a multi-million-dollar renovation to the ride within the last couple of years, we do need to look at the writing on the wall, as Accelerator is now the last remaining Intamin hydraulic launch coaster within the company. Intamin no longer manufactures parts for this specific coaster model anymore as well. So I do believe that if this ride has another major breakdown or potentially an incident, that I think this would be the end of the line for Accelerator at Knott's, and that Six Flags would just opt to remove it rather than invest more money into it to keep it open. While Accelerator was definitely revolutionary for the time when it opened, it has long since served its purpose at the park, and I believe that it could definitely be removed to make way for additional future upgrades to the park. And like X2, Accelerator also now has some rumors surrounding it about its possible removal, so I have to include it in the slight risk category rather than the honorable mentions. This next one has been a little bit more talked about, but the uncertainty about its future is why it's in the slight risk category, because we don't necessarily know what exactly will happen to this ride. I am, of course, talking about Roar at Six Flags America. The reason why the future of this ride is uncertain is because for years now, many have thought to believe that this would be a great contender to receive an RMC conversion. However, in my opinion, if this was going to receive the RMC treatment, it would have already occurred by now. This ride received a traditional retrack a few years ago, which in turn did make the ride a little bit smoother. However, the ride has still seen waning popularity, and I do not believe it is going to stick around for much longer. Whether or not it gets the RMC treatment or gets a full removal is still questionable, which is why I'm putting this ride in the slight risk category. Next up on our slight risk category, we have Shockwave over at Six Flags Over Texas. This is a rather interesting choice, and the reason I'm placing it here is because Shockwave's sister roller coaster over at Six Flags Over Georgia, formerly known as Mindbender, now known as Riddler Mindbender, a while back received some TLC with brand new trains and some track work. Both coasters respectively have been manufactured by Schwarzkopf, a now defunct coaster manufacturer, and while Riddler Mindbender has already seen some upgrades and restoration, Shockwave at Over Texas has not. And I'm hearing these days that Shockwave is not exactly running the greatest or the most popular ride at Six Flags Over Texas. And while it is safe to assume that a lot of the decisions coming from corporate to remove rides from these parks is likely to reduce maintenance and budget costs, as well as remove rides that are outdated and not popular at their respective parks anymore. So simply put, Shockwave's future is definitely uncertain, as it could go either way. It could receive a restoration and live on, or it could be fully removed from the park. And like the aforementioned X2 and Accelerator earlier in the video, there are rumors lingering around Shockwave that it could potentially be removed in the near future. Because of this reasoning, like the other two coasters mentioned, this is placed in the slight risk category rather than the honorable mentions. The next coaster I've placed in the slight risk category is purely speculation. There are no rumors surrounding this, however, I am speculating this due to recent events. We know that Six Flags is currently in the process of scrapping Green Lantern over at Six Flags Great Adventure, a B&M stand-up coaster. Given that this is currently happening is why I'm placing this next ride in my slight risk category of this video. I'm of course talking about Green Lantern's sister coaster, Riddler's Revenge over at Six Flags Magic Mountain. While most coaster enthusiasts claim that Riddler's Revenge is far better than Green Lantern ever was, I think there is no harm in safely betting on the possibility that Riddler's Revenge may be seen as a potential removal for Six Flags Magic Mountain in the future. However, I will say this ride doesn't seem very likely to be leaving anytime soon, as there are several other candidates at play for removal at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This ride really is a toss-up, considering Cedar Fair before the merger had renovated Vortex at Carowinds, also a stand-up coaster, giving it a new paint job and a panel upgrade. Which, by the way, while I am making this point, I want to exclaim that I will not be putting Vortex on this video because due to the upgrades and the refurb that it had just gotten, I don't believe it's in any immediate danger of leaving Carowinds. There is a very real and fair possibility that we see whatever is salvaged from Green Lantern at Great Adventure go over to Magic Mountain to support Riddler's Revenge to extend its lifeline. But I am including it in this video because I don't want to rule out the possibility of it potentially leaving in the near future. If they did it to Green Lantern, well, they might do it to Riddler's Revenge. Moving on to the next ride in the slight risk category, we are going to stay at Six Flags Magic Mountain because the next candidate is Viper. This Aeros Dynamics Mega Looping Coaster has definitely seen its better days. Rumors about Viper's removal have been circulating for many years now, and it would not come as a surprise to anybody if Six Flags opted to remove this roller coaster. From what I've been told, Viper is one of the least popular roller coasters in the park, and even on Magic Mountain's busiest of days, I am told that Viper usually has no line. This combined with the fact that Viper's sister coasters, Great American Scream Machine and Shockwave, both like Viper were both Aero Mega Looping Coasters. However, they have long since been defunct. And a surprising fun fact, Great American Scream Machine's replacement was Green Lantern at Great Adventure. So it's kind of funny how Viper at Magic Mountain has actually outlived both Great American Scream Machine and Green Lantern. But yeah, I think it's kind of safe to say that Viper is probably on its last legs, or at least at this point, borrowed time. However, I'm putting it in the slight risk category simply because there have been rumors surrounding this ride for years and it still hasn't happened yet, so who really knows? Moving on, we're going to head over to the Northeast, to Six Flags New England, and I believe the next coaster that could potentially be leaving that park is Gotham City Gauntlet Escape from Arkham Asylum. This Mock Rides Wild Mouse coaster was never originally intended for this park, and being as I am someone who has ridden it, I can tell you from firsthand experience, it is not a good ride whatsoever. It has very lackluster theming, and it's really not that popular of a ride at the park either. And the ride experience overall is just not that great. I find it to be a bit rough. I also find that this ride is rather unnecessary in Six Flags New England's lineup. For what it's worth though, I'm only putting this in the slight risk category because there are no rumors surrounding this coaster leaving, but rather I just see this as a potential candidate to get axed because of budget cuts. And I also see this as the most likely removal candidate at Six Flags New England, even over Flashback. If they were going to remove Flashback, I think they would have done it by now, especially now that they've already announced Goliath's replacement and it didn't require removing Flashback to add it. Moving on to our last coaster in the slight risk category, I have Carolina Cyclone over at Carowinds. While this ride is rather unpopular, it just received a repaint last year, and I honestly think that if they were going to remove it, they wouldn't have repainted it in the first place. However, with markings spotted around the ride and rumors circulating that the ride could be removed at the end of the 2024 season, I had to include it in the slight risk category. So there you have it. There's my selection of rides that I believe have a slight risk of being potentially removed from these parks in the near future. The next category we're going into is the moderate risk category. The coasters listed in this category are coasters I believe have a strong chance of being removed in the near future. However, I do not believe that these coasters in this category have the highest priority right now, which is why they are only a moderate risk and not a high risk. However, I do believe that these rides in particular could be removed within the next 5 years. Kicking off the moderate risk category are the Mr. Freeze clones located at Six Flags Over Texas and Six Flags St. Louis. These premier linear induction motor launch coasters have always caused problems for the Six Flags chain, whether it be valleying, too much power usage, or unreliability in general. Truthfully speaking, I believe these coasters have been on borrowed time for quite a while now, and I think it's only a matter of time before they decide to get rid of them for good. As I mentioned before, one of the biggest goals of the new merged company between Cedar Fair and Six Flags is to reduce as much debt as possible. And as far as I'm aware, both the Mr. Freeze clones are rather expensive to maintain and operate. There have also been rumors circulating about the Mr. Freeze clone at Six Flags Over Texas in particular, so I would especially keep an eye out for that one. In the case that that happens, they'll likely send whatever parts they salvage from that one to St. Louis's Mr. Freeze clone and probably keep that one open for a couple of extra years. Moving on to the next ride in this tier, we're going to King's Dominion to look at Anaconda. Anaconda is another Aero looping coaster. Like Viper over at Magic Mountain, Anaconda has had rumors circulating around it for years now about its removal. Quite honestly, I think this coaster has narrowly avoided its removal every year for the past 5 years. And the only reason why I believe this ride has yet to be removed from King's Dominion is because I believe the pivotal focus has been on improving everything in the surrounding areas around Anaconda rather than just just removing it. We just saw that entire area of the park get major investments, with the installation of Timbili, the retheming to Jungle Expedition, the retheming of Avalanche to Reptilian, and more. We are now seeing the retheme of Project 305 to Pantherian to continue the jungle theme in the area. However, I think this has been the pivotal focus rather than removing Anaconda, and I think the final step to the plan will be removing Anaconda in favor for something more updated and more popular. I also want to make mention that the addition of Rapterra to this part of the park makes Anaconda look almost obsolete, as Rapterra is basically an updated version of what Anaconda does plus a launch. So with that said, I don't think they're going to keep two coasters that are kinda identical to each other in the same area. Anaconda's older, so it's bound to leave eventually anyway. Next up on the list, we have Steamin' Demon over at Six Flags Great Escape. More like Steamin' Pile of This Aero Loop screw, built in 1984, sits right at the front of the park. And honestly, I think new Six Flags is going to see this as an eyesore, as it doesn't necessarily look that great at the front of the park. Not only that, but it is extremely unpopular, and I can attest to this because the day me and Tom went to Six Flags Great Escape, the ride had absolutely no line while the rest of the park was pretty busy. Facing the facts, this ride just really isn't that good. I mean, it could be a lot worse obviously, but even from my experience riding it, I didn't find it to be the most comfortable or enjoyable. And while Great Escape just recently removed the Alpine bobsled coaster, they did replace it with Bobcat, so maybe they're looking to put more investment into the park. I just wouldn't be surprised if we saw Steamin' Demon leave the park in the near future. Next up on the list, we are going back over to Six Flags Magic Mountain. Yeah, I know, there's a lot of rides from this park on this list. I just want to make mention that not all of these coasters are going to be leaving the park. However, I see these as potential future candidates to be removed from the park. This coaster is the second most likely coaster to be removed from Magic Mountain in my eyes, and I am talking about Ninja. Ninja is an aerodynamic suspended swinging coaster, a coaster model that is no longer in production. And to my knowledge, I do not believe there are any other manufacturers that produce parts for this specific model. Aside from the fact that it's a coaster model that no longer sees any production and its original manufacturer is now extinct, I have also been told that Ninja has hardly been open at all this year, so it really does seem like that there is something going on with this ride. While I do not see this as the number one option to leave the park, I believe that after the number one option is removed, this would be the next ride to keep your eyes on. Now moving on to the last coaster I've put at moderate risk of being removed from their respective park, we're going to head back over to Six Flags America to take a look at Batwing. Batwing is a Vekoma Flying Dutchman model. It's similar to the B&M Flying Coaster model, however this one you start in the laying down position already. Batwing is known to be plagued with lots of downtime and is a known maintenance nightmare. Very rarely does it ever even have its second train on the track, let alone run with two trains. This coaster also has a tendency to spend more time closed down for maintenance issues rather than being open to the public to enjoy. As I mentioned before, Project Accelerate by Six Flags is a plan that will initiate ways to reduce budget costs and remove any factors that could be seen as a money pit. The Vekoma Flying Dutchman model is also a model that does not see any more production from its respective manufacturer, meaning Vekoma does not produce parts for this anymore. And unlike Batwing's sister coaster Nighthawk over at Carowinds, it doesn't have spare parts from a defunct Flying Dutchman coaster to use spare parts from when it's needed. I believe this coaster has overstayed its welcome and has been on borrowed time for quite some time. That being said, I would not be shocked at all to see this removed in the next 2 or 3 years. Now that we have completed the moderate risk category, we are now going to be entering the high risk category. The high risk category lists coasters that I believe are in immediate danger of being removed from their respective parks. By immediate danger, I mean we could see them removed as soon as this year or next year. Now, I'd just like to disclaim that just because I'm claiming these coasters are in immediate danger of being removed does not necessarily mean it's going to happen. However, due to some of the circumstances placed on some of the coasters listed in this category, it is not far-fetched to say that they could be immediately removed from the park, effective as soon as possibly the end of next season. So the first coaster we're going to be taking a look at in high-risk category is going to be Diamondback over at Oklahoma City's Frontier City. This coaster does have some special circumstances, as I believe the chance of it being removed will go down a lot more if the park gets sold off by Six Flags. However, if Six Flags does in fact keep this park, then I think Diamondback is on its way out. Diamondback is a coaster that is notorious for its downtime. As recent memory serves, in the last few seasons, Diamondback has spent 95% of its operational season closed. At this point in time, I do believe it would be rather hard to justify any reason reason for keeping this ride at Frontier City. Diamondback is an aerodynamics shuttle launching looping coaster, a coaster model that has very little of its kind left in the world. And since aerodynamics no longer exists to manufacture parts for this model, it's hard to believe that it's easy to get any parts to maintenance this ride, which I believe is a major contributing factor to its downtime. With all that being said, I think it would just be in the best interest at this point for Six Flags to remove the ride and add something more reliable. And I would not be at all surprised if Six Flags has the same thought process as I do on this matter, which is why I believe this is at high risk of being removed from its park. The next coaster I think is at high risk of being removed from its park is Montezuma's Revenge over at Knott's Berry Farm. It's time to face the facts. This coaster has been standing but not operating for several years now, with very little progress being made on it. Each year it stands standing but not operating. From what I have been told about this ride, there have been several manufacturers involved in the restoration project. However, it seems like every manufacturer that has tried to get involved in the project has left the project as well. So to my knowledge, there isn't anybody actually working on Montezuma's Revenge, and the project is just at a standstill right now. Montezuma's Revenge is an old Schwarzkopf shuttle loop model. Parts for these ride models are not readily available, and I think the project is too far gone now to restore it in its original form. Therefore, I believe if they don't find anybody to work on this restoration soon, we're just going to see the full removal of the ride. As unfortunate as the situation is, I do fully believe that this ride is in imminent danger of being fully removed and has probably already given its last rides. So if you've gotten your credit on Montezuma's Revenge, I envy you, because I'll never get that credit. Moving on to the next coaster in the high risk category, we're going to stay within California. However, we're going north a bit. We're going to look at Flash, the vertical velocity over at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. Now, if we head over to the roller coaster database page for this ride, it is listed as standing but not operating since January 1st of this year. And I've also gone out of my way to make sure that I'm fact checking this properly, and I've asked some people in my Discord server and followers on my Instagram whether or not it is true that this ride has not once operated this year. And the unfortunate reality of it is, yeah, it hasn't opened this year. Honestly, this ride has been plagued with maintenance issues for years and years, and I'm surprised that it even still exists at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. It just received a new paint job a couple years ago, and it looks absolutely amazing, but unfortunately, I don't think that paint job is going to be enough to save it. A few years back, we saw the removal of Wicked Twister at Cedar Point, so we know Six Flags / Cedar Fair is no stranger to removing intimate impulse coasters. We know the spare parts that came from Wicked Twister went over to Valley Fair for Steel Venom, so it's highly unlikely that any of that will get transferred over to Discovery Kingdom for Flash. But I think it's a pretty safe bet to assume that if this ride doesn't open next season, it's probably done for good. The next coasters I have listed in the high risk category are the Kid Flash coasters over at Six Flags Over Georgia and Six Flags Fiesta Texas. These coasters were manufactured by Skyline Attractions, which is a counterpart company of GCI, also known as Great Coasters International. While GCI is world renowned for their amazing wooden roller coasters, Skyline has had quite the troubled history with their additions, as most of their roller coasters have been built within the last decade and most of them have also been removed already. Two examples of this would be Harley Quinn at Discovery Kingdom and Tidal Twister at SeaWorld San Diego. The Kid Flash clone coasters have been plagued with issues ever since they've opened. In fact, I think it would be safe to say that the Kid Flash coasters have spent more time closed in their lifespan rather than open. I believe that the removal of these coasters is quite imminent, as I can imagine there is really no incentive to keep investing in these two coasters to have them open again, especially with Skyline's troubled history and the potential issues that could arise in the future. Next up on the list of rides in the high risk category, we have Superman Escape from Krypton at Six Flags Magic Mountain. If you were to ask me what I think the most likely roller coaster leaving Six Flags Magic Mountain in the next few years would be, it would be Superman Escape from Krypton. This is my number one choice for coaster that's leaving the park in the near future. In recent years, we saw the removal of Superman Escape from Krypton's sister coaster Tower of Terror, which I believe makes Superman Escape from Krypton the last remaining survivor of the Intamin reverse freefall coasters. This coaster is known to be a maintenance headache and was recently listed as standing but not operating on the roller coaster database. Superman Escape from Krypton also sits right next to the plot of land that the new roller coaster coming in 2026 is going to be on. From what I've been told, Superman has opened very few times throughout this season, and now that it is listed as standing but not operating, I would not be surprised in the slightest to see it get removed to make way for future editions. While I'm not 100% confident on its removal, I am pretty sure that it's already given its last rides and we can expect to see an announcement about this ride within the next couple of years. And for anybody that wants to make the argument that the drop tower would be the saving grace for this ride. They are removing King to Ka from Great Adventure, and they're taking Zumanjaro Drop of Doom with it. And now we are moving on to the last coaster of this entire list. The last coaster I have placed on the high risk category of coasters in danger of leaving their parks is Top Thrill 2 at Cedar Point. But Austin, Top Thrill 2 is brand new. Why would you think that's in danger of leaving the park? Allow me to explain my reasoning. I think 2025 is going to be a pretty crucial year for Top Thrill 2. If they manage to actually get Top Thrill 2 open for the 2025 season, then it's going to come down to whether it has a successful season with no issues or not. I would safely argue that they've already dumped so much money into this ride to get it open that it would probably benefit them in the long run to just take it down if they had to invest even more money into getting it open. We all know that Top Thrill 2 is suffering from a multitude of issues, from the track to the trains. I have heard things along the lines of the trains that Zamperla manufactured for Top Thrill 2 are too heavy for the original Intamin track that is currently on the ride. I have also heard things along the lines that they have explored the possibility of retrofitting the old dragster trains with LSM capabilities to be able to run on the new Top Thrill 2 track. But the main argument I have for the likelihood in this being removed from Cedar Point is that it has so many issues that need to be worked out that it almost seems unlikely that it'll have a successful 2025 season. On top of all of that, I think the cherry on top comes from Siren's Curse, the new for 2025 Vekoma tilt coaster coming to Cedar Point. It is believed that this was the tilt coaster that was originally supposed to go to Six Flags Mexico. Six Flags Mexico allegedly had problems getting the permits resolved for this coaster. The reason I think Siren's Curse is the cherry on top to Top Thrill 2's demise is because I think that Cedar Point got this addition to ease the burn of removing it. There are so many other parks in the Six Flags chain that could have benefited from the addition of a tilt coaster. However, Cedar Point is receiving this addition, which Cedar Point already has a plethora of great rides in their lineup. The tilt coaster, which would have been an absolutely incredible addition and even a star attraction to some of the parks in the Six Flags chain, but rather it's going to Cedar Point, a park where the tilt coaster is not going to shine as a standout attraction amongst the lineup. And when you think about it, the addition of Siren's Curse is going to take away some of the hype that Top Thrill 2 will bring to the 2025 season. When you group all of these reasonings together, I think it's a safe bet to say that Top Thrill 2 is also on borrowed time. And as unfortunate as that is, considering Top Thrill 2 is a revolutionary prototype, it's a very real reality that I believe we could be facing in the very near future. That's going to do it for this list, guys. Just remember, a vast majority of the things that I've mentioned in this video are speculation and opinion. So if you disagree with it, that's okay. Just don't fight with me about it in the comments. The purpose behind this video is not to bring any sort of hostility, but rather I'm just throwing it out there that these are potential things that could happen. If you've made it this far in the video, I really appreciate you for watching it, as this is one of the longest videos that I have ever made. So once again, thank you for watching. This is Austin from Derailed Coasters, and I'll see you in the next video.